The film Entertainment Comes by director Đặng Minh, released in 1984, and the graphic memoir The Best We Could Do by Thi Bùi, published in 2017, both refer to the supernatural world of ghosts and suggest that ghost existence is the living projection of traumatic experiences to grasp the inscrutable reality. In this talk, I will first elaborate the conception of ghost based on my observation of Vietnamese culture and society and what the two creative works imply about ghosts. Then, the association between ghost existence and traumatic events in Đặng Minh and Thi Bùi's work would be reviewed and analyzed to indicate that the world of ghosts is created by the living. Finally, the purpose of this artificial creation as a means to comprehend the disturbing reality would be presented. So, what is ghost? In Vietnam, the concept of ghost stems from the perception that each human being is an entity made up from two main parts, the physical body and the soul that consists of home and vía. When entering death, the body and the part of vía would be dissipated. Only home will survive. However, if the person suffers from grievous death or does not receive appropriate funeral ritual, vía cannot vanish. It will linger on earth to trick or harm the living. You can refer to Heonik Kwon's Rethinking Traumas of War for further discussion. That is the case for Thi Bùi's The Best We Could Do. The spirits whose identities remain unknown, strange and mystic, are narrated by both as evils that attempt to possess the living's body. For instance, the evil spirit would lure the living to open their mouth by calling their name so that it could enter the body, or during astral projection, the body might risk being possessed by wandering soul and becoming insane. Ghosts are also invisible, or their visibility is very obscure and shadowy. Henceforth, they are intrusive and meddlesome. But that's not everything. In Thi and her younger brother Tom's perception, when they were children, the characteristics of petrifying and fathomlessness are also labeled to things other than ghosts, like the strangers come and knock the door of their house, or the exotic figure of a naked woman in the painting that Bo brings home. Therefore, the young Thi and Tom also consider them as ghosts, though they are not non-material spirits. Meanwhile, ghosts in When the Entertainment Comes, which are spirits of soldiers fighting in wartime to protect Vietnam, appear to be the home part of the soul that still exists as long as the living remembers them. Although they also suffer from sudden death, theirs are not grievous because as soldiers going to the battlefield, they could expect it. Besides, it is commonly held that when soldiers sacrifice themselves and die for the noble cause of protecting their country, their spirits would watch over and continue to protect the living if receiving sufficient and proper commemoration. The involvement of the living's remembrance in the existence of the dead spirits implies that the identity of the dead is recognizable and familiar. The film demonstrates that the two spirits who speak to Duyên, the protagonist, are not strangers. The village spirit defines himself as her village fellow, and Nam, her husband's spirit, looks, talks, and acts almost the same as when he was alive. Nonetheless, their visibility and materiality are quite ambivalent and selective. Duyên can see and talk to them, though in a very brief moment. But that visibility seems to be exclusive too. Not everyone can see those spirits. Duyên keeps secret about her husband's passing, so in the ghost market on the full moon day of the 7th lunar month, if villagers could access that place and see all the spirits, they should have figured out the truth. Notwithstanding, after the scene at the marketplace, the secret is still concealed. And the materiality of spirits also varies. It looks like Duyên can interact physically with other soldier spirits except for her husband's. Remember, in the Yin Yang market, Duyên encounters many people wearing the soldier uniforms that I believe to be spirits of the dead, because if being alive, the battlefield would be the only place you could find them, not the market. The thing is that Duyên can actually touch them and even received a rose from one of them. But when encountering Nam, Duyên could only see but not touch him. They are supposed to hold hands, but a small distance split their hands, also their worlds. The movement of Nam's hand leads Duyin's, and Duyên makes a gesture suggesting that she lovingly strokes her husband's face. There seems to be an invisible link connecting them, but at the same time, that very presence of the gap in between reminds Duyên that they are forever separated. I will elaborate more on these details later to examine how ghost existence is emanation from Duyin's unconscious mind. To conclude on the conceptualization part, ghosts in my discussion would indicate either the dead spirits that cannot be touched and visible to certain people, or figures and phenomena that carry scary quality through the living's perception and generalization. In the film directed by Đặng Minh, the ghost figures are the village spirit and the spirit of the protagonist's husband, and the supernatural phenomenon is the yin-yang market. In the book written by Thi Bùi, ghosts are no spirits trying to possess the living's body by calling their names or during astral projection. Ghostly characteristics are also applied to the strangers, imprinting their uncanny shadows on the glass panel and the exotic naked woman in a painting. The astral projection is a phenomenon that relates to supernatural world, since the soul protrudes from the living body and might leave the body, being entered by other evil spirits. In Đặng Minh film, the association between ghost existence and trauma is established through three implications. First, the ghost world emerges only after the protagonist learns about her husband's death. The film, when the entertainment comes, begins with the scene Duyên received the information that Nam sacrificed in the war. The narrative develops alongside Duyin's struggles to keep secrets about that bereavement. Feeling mournful but cannot express it, her pain is repressed into the desire to rejoin her beloved husband. Her grandmother's telling about the ghost market as the opportunity for the living and the dead to meet each other resonates in her mind twice. One when she falls into a dreaming state while burning incense at the temple's altar and having flashbacks of her husband during the peaceful time, and one when she actually enters the yin-yang market.
Bà em bảo, ngày trước cứ đến rằm tháng 7, ở cạnh miếu này người ta họp chợ để những người sống và những người chết được gặp nhau.
Second, the ghosts look and behave similarly to what has been engraved in her memory. The first time she encounters a spirit is with the village spirit, when playing the role of a wife bidding farewell to her husband who is about to set off to the war. She becomes too emotional and goes sobbing in the village temple. There, she meets the god of the village, who looks exactly like the carved figure on the temple's wall, and the character in the jail play. Duyên is surprised and leaves a remark.
Sao trông giống như người ở trong vở trèo?
Later on, she meets Nam in the ghost market, and Nam looks identical to his image before going through the war without any wounds or injuries. However, as I mentioned earlier, Nam is visible only to Duyên, the one who is informed about his death and longs for him. That enhances the possibility that ghosts are projected from Duyin's mind. The fact that Duyên could touch other spirits except for Nam implies that only Nam is desirable for her to meet and interact with. But as he is dead, he would stay in the sphere of her yearning, the domain that is beyond her reach evermore. Nam, to Duyên, is always there.
Anh vẫn ở bên cạnh em và lúc nào em cũng nhìn thấy anh.
But in her deepest soul, she has to admit to herself that he is unreachable and far away. Lastly, the sequence of scenes before and after the yin-yang market and the existence of the market itself signifies the strong correlation between trauma and ghosts. From the point of view of the audience, we cannot know certainly how Duyên arrives at the ghost market. The scene before that, she sits on the bed with her son lying beside in their own room. Then the camera follows her gaze to the photo of her husband on the shelf. At that point, the sound is interrupted. The scene is cut. It is followed by another small and seemingly distant echo, with the image of some blurry light from several candles on the river that starts the yin-yang market scene. After the brief encounter with her husband, the scene is cut disruptively again, and the new setting returns back to her home. Duyên steps out from her room to see her father-in-law burning incense at the family altar. The order of the three scenes connotes that the space and time in the yin-yang market take place within her mind rather than in reality. Otherwise, it would not be logical regarding spatial and temporal aspects. Furthermore, the film hints that the yin-yang market is the liminal space where the living and the dead coexist, that is capable of expressing trauma through the image of ghosts. Yin-yang markets are usually formed at former battlefields where there are mirrored dead bodies. The village spirit, who defines himself as a soldier in whom Đạo Vương troop, also suggests the long history of suffering from war in Vietnam.
Cảnh tiếng người ra trận bao đời nay đều như vậy cả, hết như vậy.
The fighting does not happen once, but many times, and it could last for several centuries, from generation to generation. More than that is the legacy that war scars on the living. Even the village spirit reflects on the downside of war rather than the glorious victory.
Ta chẳng là thần là thánh gì. Ngày trước ta cũng ra đi như chồng chị, và cũng để lại làng quê này một người vợ trẻ như chị bây giờ.
His saying betokens that war is always a traumatic event, and from such a space that embraces an abundance of agonies is the market of ghosts. In other words, the mourning of the living for losses in war is represented by the existence of ghosts and the ghost market day. The ghost market, henceforth, is not a merely superstitious phenomenon, but a cultural practice that has been formed closely alongside Vietnam history of suffering from war traumas. Similarly, The Best We Could Do offers the perspective of Bố and his two youngest children, Thi and Tâm, about ghosts and traumatic experience. Thi, when being a child, links ghosts to threatening situations. So does Bố. Thi does not make the connection obviously. Instead, she places the frightening incidents with the scary story of ghosts that Bố tells her. The first example is the warning that the body could be occupied by the dead spirits.
If you hear a voice calling your name that you don't recognize, don't answer it. It is the spirit trying to trick you into opening your mouth to enter your body.
Right after these panels of bizarre voices invading the living world is the recording of the telephone ringing with a strange voice asserting,
I want to eat your pussy.
That immediately suggests the link between the two stories. The unfamiliar and daunting voice could be imagined as the ghost voice trying to possess her body. Another instance is the shadowy figures reflected on the glass panels and the pervasiveness of the naked woman in a painting that Bose brings home. When first seeing the picture, Tâm wonders, is it a ghost? Because the depicted figure is too alienated from him. That estrangement is expressed in the memoir through the obscurity of that picture. The woman is vaguely shaped without detailed facial expression. When there are unknown, unidentified people that come knocking the door, Bố urges Thi and Tâm to pretend we are not here. Therefore, the strangers' identities are never revealed to Tâm and Thi. They remain in the sphere of incomprehensible and unfamiliar beings. Tam's reaction to this event is to hide himself in the closet. But while his home faces dangers from outsiders. This hidden place is disturbed by the presence of the naked woman, a ghost brought inside home. The panel showing the painting of the naked woman illustrates her down from her neck, without her face or any trace that help establish a sense of familiarity. Her left arm stretches out of the painting and even out the graphic panel, reaching the next frame in which thumb is shrinking inside the closest corner. The prevalence of strangers interfering with their daily life prompts to the overwhelming presence of ghostly figures haunting thumb. In that way, the naked woman represents the child's fearful and insensible events. In both viewpoints, he also does not point out clearly how ghosts turn out to be the representation of his traumatic past, but after telling all his long, distressing childhood, he concludes,
You know how it was for me, and why later I wouldn't be normal.
The words of ghosts in the film and the illustrated memoir converge at the suggestion that the supernatural world is created by the living, especially because the living suffers from some kind of trauma. But why and how so? In the next part, I would propose that the creation of ghosts is a critical means for the living to comprehend the insensible and disturbing reality. Duyên, in When the Tenth Month Comes, is bewildered after discovering that her husband will not ever return and not knowing how to distribute this grieving information. So she leans on the ghost's advice as guidance for her internal conflicts. The village spirit, when talking to her, only repeats what she has already been informed, as he introduces himself as a village fellow and once went off to the north to fight off enemy invaders. Duyên directly comes to the conclusion that he's the village spirit, proving that she is familiar with this story about the sacred spirit that protects her homeland. Then she asks about her husband, only to hear the village spirit evoke what is always imprinted in her memory. Those are peaceful days when Nam burns the kite at the temple before partaking in the war. The keepsake is usually given to one's dearest so that he or she would be remembered. In this case, Nam burns the kite at such a sacred place as a way to ask for protection from the village good spirits. So the kite becomes the keepsake that is now returned, because he no longer needs that shelter. Duyên is shocked.
Sao? Vậy là chồng tôi không còn nữa thật sao?
As if until then she has not believed in the woeful announcement letter. She suppressed her sorrow to fool herself, but now the confirmation forces her to face reality and to figure out how to deal with it. The encounter with Nam unfolds her concerns about whether or not she should reveal the secret to her father-in-law and how she should think of Kang, the village teacher that acquires the truth about Nam's death by accident and agrees with Duyên to forge Nam's letters so that the secret is kept. Regarding the former issue, Duyên, though feels confused about not telling her father-in-law the secret, still determines to prevent him from learning the truth. Nam solely reinforces her intuition.
Bố vẫn đinh ninh là thế nào anh cũng về đấy.
Hãy để cho bố được thanh thản, rồi anh sẽ về.
He ensures Duyên that she does not need to feel guilty of lying to his father, because when his father passes away, Nam will rejoin him and hence uncover the truth. About her sentiment toward Kang, Duyên never shows passionate affection to him, but the more her trust towards him grows, the more she bears in mind his image. If we presume that the space of ghost is actually the projection of her unconsciousness, the fact that Kang always appears in the domain of dreams implicitly suggests that he is integrated into her train of thought unwittingly. Nam validates her emotions and resolves her disintegration within herself due to the moral standard, claiming that a wife has to be loyal to her husband, particularly when he fights for the nation.
Anh chỉ muốn những người sống được hạnh phúc.
Hạnh phúc mà.
Chỉ có những người đang sống mới làm được điều đó. Anh đã làm xong phần việc của mình rồi.
Nam advises Duyên to be happy, neither on her own nor with his image kept in mind. He urges her to enjoy happiness with other living people, which could be her father-in-law, her son, and even Kang. There's nothing anew disclosed to Duyên, and on her talks with ghosts confirm or support her tendency to cope with her puzzling reality. That demonstrates the ghost world is the source of consolation she can rely on to justify her course of action. The best we could do provides us with Bo's childhood to show that his surrounding environment is so chaotic that he has to think of the supernatural force to explain such reality. In the former part, I propose that Thi and Tâm are the ones who significantly connect threatening events with ghosts, but ghosts come into being through Bo's narration. He's said to practice astral projection in sleep, which means his soul would leave his body. This revelation of his practice is a bleed, a panel that spans an entire page in Thi Bui's memoir, giving the impression that he is truly immersed in this procedure. His shadow lying on the top of the page is portrayed only with his peripheral fuzzy shape, while the shape of him extruding his soul to somewhere else is sharp and distinctive from the background. It proves that astral projection, or the state of leaving his body, is desirable to him. If we look at the panels preceding this split, we would think that astral projection is something scary and precarious. In those frames, Thi reminisces her nightmare of getting lost and not finding her way back home. Being excluded from home is bothersome to her. In my sleep, I dreamed of how terrible it would be to not find my way home. I never had dreams about flying or thoughts of running away from home. Right after the splash, Thi stated that it is her memory of the terrible prank during the astral projection, in which a living body is possessed by other wandering souls and his soul could never reunite with his body. The order of this sequence suggests that the body is also home to the soul, but both spirit rejects or is rejected to be harmonious with his body, which is also his home. The past is unraveled and lets us know that Bo used to be a witness and subject of violence and turmoil at home. Bo's father beat his mother furiously, and later on, when Bo was forced to move to a new home and live with his grandparents, Bo's father, before joining with Minh, kicked him fiercely, which Bo never expected. He was upset and firmly thought,
You are not my papa.
His father is alienated from him. Therefore, to Bo, home is not a safe place, and he is expelled from what called home so many times that finally he leaves his country and settles down in a faraway nation. To the figurative concept of the body as home, his body is also the sphere that is subject to pain. Hence, home and the body as home is not desirable to him. Rather, it is the spiritual world that he aspires for, and it is the world of strange, alienated beings that is responsible for all the past and present turbulence. Furthermore, the illustration of the graphic memoir enables the reader to understand why Thi is obsessed with ghosts. The memoir is actually Thi's perspective when growing older and reflecting on her childhood. When she was a child, besides the hideous and terrifying events that happened to her and the horror of ghosts, Bo's behaviors befuddle her. Bo also carries some features of a ghost himself through the younger Thi's perception. When he first tells the evil spirits trying to enter the living body, Bo is depicted as a gray silhouette rather than a complex drawing that helps distinguish Bo from other strangers. Then, when the strangers annoy his family, Bo requests his children to ghostify themselves.
Just pretend we're not here.
Which makes him turn into an absent presence, like ghosts. After that, When his soul leaves his body during astral projection, he becomes totally uncanny in his viewpoint. There's not a unified person called Bố, but are two of him, his soul and his body, in discordance with each other. Then he studies carefully each detail of ghost images in both books. I read and reread both books and paraphernalia, studying the pictures until I had memorized every disturbing detail. The books and images have a clear form to be identified, to be no longer strangers to her, and they fit conveniently inside her gripping hand. They seem to be in her control, rather than being elusive, intrusive, and incomprehensible. She is captivated by the ghost world as an attempt to not only make sense of the ghostly world haunting her surrounding, but also understand Bố, the quote-unquote unexorcised demons that had nowhere to go in America's finest city. To make a conclusion on the correlation between ghosts and trauma, I would say that both When the 10th Month Comes and The Best We Could Do write about the repercussions of the so-called Vietnam War, and both indicate the existence of ghosts as manifestation of the living's trauma. They show us the lingering effects of wartime and raise significant questions. Does a war have any specific end date, as we usually acquire from history, or its ghosts would continually haunt the survivors and their next generations? Thank you for listening.